When you look at a beehive, it's easy to just see this chaotic, buzzing cloud, right? But what if I told you that inside that cloud, there's a hidden, incredibly sophisticated conversation happening every single second? Well, today we're going to dive in and decode one of the most amazing languages in the entire animal kingdom.
So picture this. On the surface of the honeycomb, it looks like a crazy, nonstop dance party. I mean, thousands of bees are crawling all over each other in this constant whirlwind of activity. And then a forager bee, fresh from a field of flowers, returns to the colony. And that's when the real show begins. But is she just, dancing because she's excited? Or is this something else entirely? Is it just a party? Or could it actually be a language, packed with precise, life-saving information for the whole hive? That's the mystery we're about to solve. For decades, this behavior was a total puzzle to scientists. They knew it had to be important, but the code? It was completely unbroken. That is, until one brilliant researcher dedicated his entire life to cracking it.
And that researcher was Karl von Frisch, an Austrian zoologist who became obsessed with this question. After years and years of painstaking experiments using these special glass-walled observation hives, he came to a conclusion so stunning it actually won him the Nobel Prize. These dances are a language that tells other bees exactly where to find food.
Okay, so if it's a language, what are the words? How on earth does a dance translate into a map? Let's get into it and decode the actual dance moves.
Von Frisch figured out that bees basically have two main dances. If the food is super close to the hive, say less than 50 meters away, a bee does a simple round dance, just running around in circles. This pretty much just says, hey, good stuff is nearby, go look around. But for anything further away, she uses a much, much more complex dance. And that, my friends, is the famous Waggle Dance. It's this figure-8 pattern where the bee runs a straight line right down the middle, waggling her body like crazy, and then circles back around. And packed into that one little movement are two incredibly important pieces of information: distance and direction. So first up, distance. How does a tiny bee tell her sisters how far they need to fly? Is it just a quick trip or a long-haul flight? Well, the secret is all in the timing of that waggle. And here's the secret, it's amazing. The length of time that she does that straight, waggling run is a direct code for the distance to the food. A longer waggle means a longer flight. And to give you an idea of how precise this is, a waggle that lasts for just 1 second tells the other bees to fly for almost a full kilometer to find their target. Incredible. Okay, so distance is one thing, but direction? That's a whole other level of genius, because you have to remember, the bee is giving these directions from inside the hive. And that is the huge challenge here. The inside of a honeycomb is completely, totally dark. There are no landmarks, no windows. You definitely can't see the sun, which is the bee's main navigation tool when she's out in the big, wide world. This is the part that just blows my mind. How in the world do you give directions relative to the sun when you're in total darkness? Well, the bees came up with an absolutely brilliant solution. It is so clever. They basically swap one cosmic force for another. Outside, they use the sun. Inside, they use gravity. They literally translate the angle of the sun in the sky into an angle against the pull of gravity, right there on the vertical wall of the honeycomb. Let's break that down. So first, the forager bee flies out and she mentally clocks the angle between the hive, the food source, and the sun. Let's just say it's 60 degrees to the left of the sun. Then she goes back to the pitch black hive and she recreates that exact angle. She does her waggle run at 60 degrees to the left of straight up. And to every other bee in that hive, straight up always, always means the direction of the sun. It's this incredible act of abstract communication. But just when von Frisch thought he had the entire language figured out, the scientific community pushed back a little. Some other researchers weren't totally convinced the dance was the whole story, and that led to a pretty major debate. So, the debate basically came down to two competing ideas. On one side, you had von Frisch's dance language theory, which said the bees are literally reading a map from the dance. But on the other side was the odor hypothesis, which argued that no, the bees are just following the flower smell that's clinging to the dancing bee's body. So, who was right? Well, as it so often turns out in science, the reality was actually a little bit of both. Modern research has shown pretty conclusively that both the dance and the scent are crucial parts of the message. And the proof for this is, honestly, one of the coolest experiments in biology. Researchers built a little robotic bee that could perform the waggle dance perfectly. But, and this is the key, they found that the robot could only get other bees to fly to the food source if it also carried the right floral scent. So the dance gets them into the right neighborhood, and the scent helps them pinpoint the exact flower.
What this discovery really shows us is that the waggle dance isn't some isolated trick. No, it's just one piece of a much larger, multi-layered communication system that allows the whole colony to function with just breathtaking efficiency. So the complete bee communication toolkit is multisensory. You've got the waggle dance, which is communication through movement. You have pheromones for all kinds of scent-based signals, food, danger where the queen is. And you even have antenna tapping, which is a form of communication through touch, almost like a secret handshake to recognize who belongs in the hive. And when you put all those pieces together, the movement, the scent, and the touch, what you get is a system that allows thousands of individual little bees to act as one single, highly coordinated, and incredibly intelligent superorganism. This right here, this is the wisdom of the hive. It really changes how you see a single bee on a flower, doesn't it? She's not just out there grabbing food for herself. She's a scout, a messenger, a tiny map maker who's getting ready to go home and tell a very precise story to all of her sisters. Every single bee is part of this much, much larger conversation. And that really leaves us with a final thought to chew on. If an insect with a brain the size of a pinhead can develop a symbolic language this complex, one that can describe a location it can't even see, what other conversations are happening in the natural world, right under our noses, that we just haven't learned how to decode yet?